Ladies and gentlemen, Very Honest Shenanigans is very proud to present Comic Corner. Hello and welcome back to Very Honest Shenanigans. This is Comic Corner, where we break down all things comic books, graphic novels, and the history and context behind them. Today we're talking about an interesting intersection between advertisement and edutainment comics. Mickey and Goofy explore the universe of energy. It's a comic where the title kind of says it all. But while they explore this defunct Disney attraction, they learn about different forms of renewable energy, all sponsored by Exxon. Before we get into the meat of the story, however, it's important to understand the context of why Exxon would even sponsor a ride at EPCOT Center at the time, let alone pay for the maintenance fees and also create educational materials. For that, we have to jump to the 1950s. You see, when Walt Disney is trying to get the money to actually build Disneyland, he made a deal with ABC at the time to get some of the money to be able to just build the basic park in exchange for a television show based on this new innovation of the theme park. This show later became the Disneyland television series, which would evolve into the Wonderful World of Color. A massive hit by television standards, other companies started to realize the power of the Disney name, and soon many companies would sponsor rides at the park just so their names would be associated with the Disney name and IP. These sponsorship arrangements would be popular well into the 2000s, and while not as prevalent today, you still have a few rides, especially in Epcot, sponsored by some sort of company. Speaking of Epcot Center, this idea was still very fresh and innovative in the landscape of theme parks, so Epcot wound up being a park with a lot of sponsored rides when it opened. And while most are defunct now, it's still fascinating to see the effort that these companies had made just to be a part of the Disney name. Now that we have a bit more context on why a company would even fund a ride in a theme park, we move on to the subject of the story and its sponsor, Exxon. Now, of course, Exxon now has many subsidiaries in their hands and different industries, but they primarily deal with oil and gasoline. They decided with Disney to create a ride that not only showed how energy was made and used by society, but the different types of energy sources. Now, full disclosure, I will say, Exxon has had many controversies in the past, but for the sake of this video, we will look at the comic through the eyes of it as a time capsule of the era and also the context within the story. So, without further ado, let's go into the comic and look at the art and the story behind it. Again, the story's very basic. Mickey and Goofy explore the universe of energy. You kind of get everything that you needed there. But it's very interesting because, again, this is edutainment, so you do learn about the different forms of energy. And, of course, we try to talk about that art. So the front cover has the original building for the universe of energy. And this was a ride that was updated a couple times. It later became Ellen's Energy Adventure with Ellen DeGeneres, which another controversial figure, but we won't get into that unless you want me to go into like the history of the ride, which I would love to make a video about that. Just let me know down in the comments below. But if you look at the Mickey and Goofy characters as well, this is the character style that they used in the 80s. They was a bit more rounded, a bit more sophisticated, less rubber hose, less simple. And I always really liked this style, especially this style wound up going into the 90s. It's kind of the Mickey that I grew up with. It's very well drawn, and especially in the comics, I'm a sucker for this. But of course, the inciting incident to get into the universe of energy is, it's a ride. Mickey says it looks fun, and Goofy's like, but I'm hungry. I need energy to go. And it's like, what a coincidence. This is the universe of energy. Let's learn about different energy sources. So, the main good thing about this is that Goofy is sort of the foil. He is the character in which the reader can immerse themselves in because Goofy's the one asking the questions. By Goofy being so clueless and asking these questions, Mickey is then being able to be the knowledgeable one to give Goofy these answers about the different forms of energy. So, right off the bat, they walk in, and Goofy points out all of the ones that we're going to learn about. There's oil, there's natural gas, there's coal, hydroelectric, nuclear, and solar power. And of course, Mickey then goes on to explain about oil. Of course, most of this is still pretty accurate from the day. Again, this is coming from Exxon, an oil company. Talking about how dinosaurs and ancient creatures were alive, but then their bodies decomposed, they sedimented over time, and then the hydrogen and carbon combined chemically to form hydrocarbon compounds, and eventually that turned into the natural gas that comes today. And then, of course, it shows the animatronic dinosaurs in the ride, which are always adorable. I love them. I do miss when Disney had a lot more animatronics like that. It just made it a lot more immersive in the ride. But of course, the dinosaurs drawn cute, and then Mickey starts giving some energy tips of how we can conserve energy. The one that makes me laugh the most, I'll put a picture up on here, is that Mickey's like, we can all try to conserve energy and not drive cars faster than 55 miles an hour. The Texan in me is laughing so hard at that line. I mean, if you go on a highway in Texas, everyone's going at least 80 or more. So, my bad. I think we're the ones causing most of the energy at this point. But then he goes on to talk about crude oil and natural gas, especially saying that like natural gas is still something we haven't tapped into. And of course, another time capsule thing. Here he says sometimes we can't depend on other countries for oil. Since 1973, our foreign oil supply has been cut off twice. Of course, this is talking about the oil shortages in the 70s. It's very interesting that, they would talk to kids about that and give them that. It would also maybe spark conversation with their parents about, oh my god, wow, what do you mean it's been cut off twice? Mom, Dad, what happened? So, again, here comes another time capsule one. They're talking about gasoline. And he was like, yeah, and gasoline was scarce. It became very expensive too. And Goofy's with his open wallet, like 50 cents, 79 cents, $1.27. Gosh, makes that scares me a lot. Scares me a lot. But if I could pay $1.27 for gas, oh my gosh, I would drive everywhere just for fun. But then they talk about other sources. They even talk about Alaska being a source for oil. And it's really funny because, again, being this wonderful place where we could probably get some more oil, but worried about the permafrost, which, again, they explain it's a permanently frozen layer of ice and soil that can be thousands of feet deep. Basically, mine Alaska, which has still become a recent thing, especially with the Russians wanting Alaska. But it's really cute because even this scene, you got them wearing different costumes. Of course, they go to Alaska within the ride, and you have them wearing their cute little winter outfits. Again, all of the art in here is just so beautiful, very much of the style of the 80s. And you have the map of Alaska shown from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez. And then, of course, Goofy asking questions about oil, why they want to drill in the sea and not the land. And Mickey then, explains it for a little bit to him. Because, again, Mickey is the knowledgeable one in this one. He even goes over how an oil rig works. Which, again, for a kid's comic, it's amazing that they went into so much detail. Again, it's probably because Exxon's like, oh my god, look at how amazing it is that we know how to drill oil from the ocean with the kid propaganda, you know what I mean? And so Mickey actually does talk about oil and gas being limited, which again, props to Exxon for at least saying that, because they could have just taken the propaganda route and being like, oh my god, oil and gas, it's the most important. And of course that we got to focus on that. But they being honest, eventually we'll run out, so that's why we have to explore other means. And that's when, after talking about oil for a while, again, an oil company made this, they talk about hydroelectric. Talking about how dams make hydroelectric energy. And then they talk about coal and how you burn coal and it produces steam with the water. When it's heated up, it's amazing. And there's a lot of interesting diagrams in here as well. I'll probably show some pictures up on here. If not, don't worry, I will show some at the end, just in case I don't have the time. And then here's a crazy one. They then talk about nuclear power, which thank goodness they used to be more optimistic about nuclear power back in the day, because there's not really so much scare as much. And of course, I think I'm gonna look this up real quickly. Yeah, so this comic came out 1 year before the Chernobyl disaster. So we were still pretty optimistic about nuclear energy. Chernobyl did a lot to really, really halt a lot of nuclear industry and nuclear power plants, and it created a huge scare for no reason. Chernobyl was just horribly mismanaged, and I just wish people would be more educated about nuclear energy because I truly believe that is the future that we should go towards. Especially a lot of people are like, oh, but the danger, but we're well aware of the danger. And even learning about the different ones in this comic, you could even see that nuclear energy honestly does a lot, especially more than hydroelectric and solar. Again, probably because of funding and the way that we've done it. It's funny because even how they describe solar and hydroelectric is pretty much exactly the same since the 80s. But other than that, they then start getting cute and talking about like where the different things, and back to the universe of energy, the animatronics. And Goofy and Mickey are just enjoying themselves on the ride vehicle. And then they look up the sun, talk about solar. And yeah, Epcot Center, in the universe of energy, used to have solar panels on the top of the universe of energy. And it said here, it's probably a lot more now when they were updating it, but 86,000 cells produce 75 kilowatts of power, which is pretty crazy for back in the 80s, especially because, again, Disney was letting Exxon pay for all of this. So, well, good job, Disney. So now that I'm warmed up, I've got plenty of mental energy to learn more. Let's go. Great. There's lots to learn in Kassan's energy exchange. And then the energy exchange, I'll just show you a picture of what it says. But it was basically just this little area afterwards where kids could just learn about energy. There was even one where it was like a TV that was powered by a bike. I'll show you Goofy on it on this one. And it's crazy because Mickey then says, just think how you'd feel after pedaling at this rate for 9 days. That's how long it would take you to produce the same amount of energy in 1 gallon of gasoline. Again, you gotta plug Exxon at the end. And that's pretty much the end of the story, talking about each one. Again, hopefully we should be able to show the art on each one, but it's beautiful. I really like how, again, it's nice, short, simple, to the point. Obviously, they will talk about gasoline and oil a little bit more in the comic, but it's really fun because it's just a cute read and a very good time capsule. And again, talking about nuclear energy before the Chernobyl incident happened. So this is usually the part of the story where I have like a personal question to give Frank and Matt, but unfortunately, I was recently kidnapped. He was very nice to let me film all of this for you guys, but hopefully they're looking for me. But if not, I kind of thought it would be kind of a fun thing to like have this hypothetical with everybody. You guys in the comments comment below as well, but in the context of Very Honest Shenanigans and Rod, I thought to myself, if I was like a big company like Exxon, and I was given the opportunity to sponsor a ride at Disney and, upkeep it, maintain it, which one would I pick? So I went about it 2 ways. I picked one ride that already existed and that Rod would change. And then there's another one where Rod and Very Honest Shenanigans will build it from the ground up. And then we would make it our own. We would maintain it. It would be the best ride. So, here we go. For me, if it was like do a pre-existing ride and sponsor it, hands down, the ride that I would do would Journey into Imagination. Especially with the current iteration that hasn't been updated since the early 2000s. Very Honest Shenanigans would restore that to its former glory. We'd close everything down. We would double the size of it again because it was halved. Again, if you want to hear me talk about ride history, I won't be like Defunct Land levels of amazing, but I do know my fair bit of theme park history. But we would double the size, again, of the Journey into Imagination. We would bring back the Dreamfinder. We would bring back the figments that animatronics that everybody loved. And we would bring back the Rainbow Tunnel and all of the cool stuff at the end. It wouldn't be a one-for-one copy of the original ride from the 80s when Epcot first opened, but I believe if we bring back the Dreamfinder and we bring back the original Journey into Imagination about the joys of learning and using your imagination, we would be so much better off. And it would be chock full of animatronics. I would pay for every single one out of my pocket just so that we would have that Disney magic again in there. That's just me always being a dreamer, hoping that they will update the Journey into Imagination. But if Disney was like Very Honest Shenanigans and Rod, you have to make a ride from scratch, and you sponsor it, but it's your free creative reign. Well, then we got to do it. We got to do the one that a lot of Disney fans have been talking about. Emperor's New Groove the wrong lever roller coaster. So you go up, you start off, you go through the queue, you're going through Yzma's lab, and then you get in the ride vehicle, and then you go up to the famous tusks. And Yzma's animatronic's right there. She's next to a Kronk animatronic. It's like, pull the lever, Kronk. So Kronk pulls that, and then all of a sudden, you drop down. Wrong lever! And then you go through a roller coaster. It would be like Space Mountain meets Guardians meets Rise of the Resistance. And it would be so fantastic. It would basically be you escaping Yzma, and then finally, of course, Yzma getting captured at the end. As a cat, we would see the transformation as well, because we would have an animatronic that would turn Yzma from a human into a cat. And man, we would print money with that. People have been talking about getting an Emperor's New Groove roller coaster based off of that scene for years. So, what would we call it? The wrong lever roller coaster. Love it. Short, simple, to the point. Tells you everything you need to know if you're a fan of the Emperor's New Groove. If you see it, you're like, wrong lever roller coaster. What the heck is that? But I feel like that would be it. That would be amazing. Well, I know this is a huge departure from what we usually talk about on this channel, so I'm just happy that y'all came up to see it. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that bell notification icon for updates. If you have any comics that we'd like to deep dive more into, let us know. This is a new format we are trying out. And again, if you want me to go into those deep dives for theme parks as well, I'm more than happy to do that. But if you're like, oh god, I hated this, let us know, please. We would love to hear your feedback. One thing that I'd like to know about, especially in this video, what ride would you sponsor? What ride would you change at any of the Disney parks? Please let me know. But as always, guys, this has been Very Honest Shenanigans, and this has been Rod. Thank you so much for coming to the first episode of Comic Corner. Stay sketchy.
Hey there, Honest Fam. If you enjoyed the chaos and fun today, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more wild adventures.
Remember, if you let us shenan once, we'll shenan again. So stick around for more last and unexpected twists.
Got any ideas for our next shenanigan? Drop them in the comments below. Until next time, keep it honest and keep it fun.
Goodbye.